Why Eating Meat Isn't Immoral for Humans by me, Santizo. The morality of eating meat is highly debated in current discussions on ethics to do with animal welfare, environmental impacts, and plant-based options. The critics would argue that meat consumption itself is immoral, and that veganism or vegetarian options are what people should be practicing. This again forgets that humans evolved to be omnivorous, and that there could be a supply of meat that is both sustainable and ethically produced. It also is important to consider natural, nutritional, and cultural relevance of meat throughout human history. One can consider meat production as a justification against counter-arguments to the meat consumption being judicious in the consumption, while taking note the legitimacy of arguments and showing how a more nuanced view that better meets ethical and practical concerns. Humans are omnivorous, consuming plants and animals for several millennia. Versatility has enabled our ancestors to spread across the globe into different ecosystems and still thrive. Anthropological evidence is showing that the consumption of meat drastically affected the human brain development due to its nutrient-rich properties, which allowed the cognitive and physical development of the biological features. Also denote this to be an omnivorous trend, as humans have teeth both to grind plant materials and tear animal flesh, as well as digestive enzymes that can break down a wide variety of foods. To consider an evolutionary pattern of eating meat to be immoral is to be disconnected from our natural heritage and biology. Although ethical considerations do have a place within modern practice, completely negating the consumption of meat goes against ecological and evolutionary roles that humankind has conventionally played. In any case, critics do tend to cite adverse effects of factory farming, which has tremendous ethical and environmental concerns. Industrial meat production is animal cruelty, habitat destruction, and has high greenhouse gas emissions. These are only issues engineered from a certain mode of production and not from meat consumption itself. Indeed, sustainable and ethical ways of producing meat exist. For example, regenerative agriculture is put into focus with such methods as rotational grazing that care in animal welfare, soil health, and carbon sequestration. Evidence has shown that extensive pasture-raised livestock can complement conversation, having limited impact in promoting biodiversity, while at the same time minimizing the environmental impact of agriculture. Besides, it ethically consumes meat to contribute to international goals on sustainability. Instead of a yes-no debate on no meat, attention should fall on promoting those practices which respect animals and maintain ecological equilibrium. For many cultures, meat is woven into the very fabric of their identity and tradition. In feasts, religious services, and group banquets, it is a sign of plenty, sacrifice, and good fellowship. To classify meat consumption as immoral is to jeopardize long-standing cultural traditions that have formed an integral part in human existence. Nutritionally, meat is a singular source of high-quality proteins, essential amino acids, and micronutrients such as iron, zinc, and vitamin B12. Throughout nutritionally complete plant-based alternatives do exist. They are not necessarily nutritionally available in areas of limited food variety. As a matter of fact, meat is a staple that is useful and necessary to their cuisine for sustaining them. When plant-based alternatives just cannot consistently manage any ethnic disadvantage and requirements for nutrition. No, I skipped a line. Any ethnic that broadly prohibits the consumption of meat ignores a real cultural diversity, economic disadvantage, and requirements for nutrition. Those against meat consumption indicate that human alternatives to meat make it possible for humans not to consume them, and that it is therefore superfluous and immoral to continue doing so at the expense of animal suffering because of intense farming. Vegans also believe that animals have the capability to feel emotion, hence raising them for food and killing them is not only inhumane, but also against all ethics. Other critics point to environmental repercussions from meat production, deforestation, and water pollution and greenhouse gas emissions are part of the accusations against factory farming. With plant-based diets being way less harmful to the environment, it becomes an ethical duty on part of humans to shift towards more viable food systems. Though these are convincing arguments, they all tend to neglect a lot of key contextual specifics. Consumption of meat in not every form is cruel or hurting the environment. Ethical farming methods try to address these concerns, and in that sense, the moral question seems less related to an outright rejection of meat than to reform in the ways in which it is produced. And that does not mean ethical considerations do not weigh on plant-based diets either. To think of labor exploitation in the fields or environments impact coming from monocultural farming, and the nuance goes both ways and must be taken into consideration. Any moral judgments about eating meat must be based on context and intention. Eating meat is not necessarily an act of cruelty. Ethics depend on the condition of its production and the cultural or nutritional circumstances of consumption. Just as plant-based diets have environmental and ethical trade-offs, so does meat production. A holistic view also represents the challenge of both systems and focuses on minimizing harm, rather than imposing any kind of rules or absolutes. The hunting and animal husbandry are a part of indigenous peoples' ways of sustainable lifestyles, which are an integral part of their relationship to nature and do not resonate at all with the exploitative way of industrial farming. Condemning all meat eating disrespects these traditions and overlooks the many ways in which humanity interacts with the natural world. No absolute answer can be given to whether it is immoral to eat meat, although much can be taken away from the charge against factory farming. And the environmental concerns linked to large-scale production. Such charges do not implicate all consumption of meat as being intrinsically immoral. Humans are omnivores whose cultural and nutritional needs have and variability included meat. Ethical and ecological ways of farming open avenues of consumption of responsibility that will respect animals and the environment. Reframe this in terms of questions of reform rather than all or nothing. Society can take up perfectly valid concerns over meat consumption without denying its great roles from both cultural and nutritional dimensions of ecology. Instead of outright rejection, care must be given into systems imbued with shared values related to sustainability, animal welfare, and respect for varied human traditions. I'm sorry about the kind of bad reading. Not great lighting in my room, and don't wear my contacts all day, so kind of